Hi, my name is Nathan. You're watching Nice at Dice, and today I am talking about a game called Small Star Empires. I've already done a review of this game. I will put a link to it in the description for you to go check out if you haven't seen my review of the game yet, or you don't know anything about the game. But today specifically I'm going to be talking about several expansions for the game. These expansions were all released together as a part of the Kickstarter project that funded the base game. The expansions that I have that I'm going to be reviewing are the 5 and 6 player expansion, the Galactic Divide, Dawn of Discoveries, and Fate of the Galaxy. So I'm going to be kind of walking you through what each of those expansions adds to the game. Then we're going to come back here and I'm going to give you my thoughts on each of the expansions and really what the expansions overall add to the game and my just more broad thoughts on the game altogether, including the expansions. So let's get right to it. So the first expansion for Small Star Empires is the 5 to 6 player expansion. Comes with 2 sets of player pieces in white, or sort of a light gray, I guess, and purple. Basically more ships, colonies, and all the different types of stations, as well as your home sectors for each color. So it basically just allows you to add a 5th or 6th player to the game. The next expansion for the game I want to talk about is called the Galactic Divide. It comes with this rulebook, relatively small, straightforward, and it adds just a few things to the game. So first of all, it adds these player boards. It comes with at least 4 of these. I actually have 8, although some of those may have been exclusive rewards for Kickstarter backers, but there's at least 4 of them. And they you give 1 to each player, and they give each player a couple of unique abilities that sort of set their play style apart from the other players. So you're going to give 1 of these to each player, and I'll explain a little bit of how those work in just a minute. But the next thing that it adds to the game is it adds these new types of station. These are called battle stations, and each player gets 3 of these. And basically what battle stations do is they don't really allow you to attack your opponents per se, but let's say your opponents have a number of cities and stations on the board, and the red player moves into the middle here of those cities and stations, and they build a battle station. So what they're going to do is they're going to immediately gain a resource called power. And the amount of power they gain is 2 for each city adjacent to the battle station, and 1 for each station adjacent to the battle station. And those are just your opponent's cities and stations. So right here he would gain immediately 2, 4, 6, 7 power. And so you track that on your player board like this. So 7 power will put you right there. And then you can spend this power to use your special abilities. So you have another 2 little wooden discs in your color, and they start out here and here. And for example, you could spend 3 power, bringing you down to 4 power, to move this up to here, and then use this ability. And then the next time you want to use this ability, you'd spend another 3 power, bringing you down to 1 power, and you'd move it up like so, and use the ability again. And now the next time you use it, you're going to have to spend 4 power and 4 power, and so forth. So you can see that the power cost of the different abilities is adjusted based on how useful the ability is, and it gets more expensive the more times you use it. Now there is, however, another aspect of this is if you spend, say, 3 power to use that ability, so now you're down to 4 power, and then you spend 2 power to use that ability, so now you are down to 2 power. In between here, you can see there's a number 1 and the little symbol for power. So you actually, because these 2 line up, you get 1 power back. So if you use both of your abilities sort of an equal number of times, then it effectively reduces the cost to use your abilities. Now your abilities do a variety of things, like for example, with this guy you can see his abilities. The top one lets you damage an opponent's ship that is adjacent to one of your ships and score 2 points for doing so. His lower ability lets you choose a non-nebula system containing an opponent's city that is adjacent to at least 2 of your systems, destroy that city, and score 2 points. So these abilities are going to make this player a lot more aggressive. He's going to be damaging his opponent's ships. He's going to be actually destroying some of their cities, opening up systems for him to move in and conquer. And so that's going to change sort of the whole tenor of the game if someone is playing with that faction. This faction, on the other hand, lets you sort of grow out your system more quickly. So it's useful for trying to capitalize on that in-game scoring for the largest contiguous area. And the other factions have different sorts of abilities. This one can actually move through sectors that are occupied by other players and score points for doing so. And this one can actually let you build cities in systems that are already occupied by your opponents. So that's pretty interesting. And then this one kind of helps you capitalize on the trade stations. So different abilities really add some asymmetry to the game. Each player is going to have different things that they can sort of excel at, and it adds a lot more variety to the game. And so that's basically what this expansion, the Galactic Divide, adds to the game. All right, next up is the Dawn of Discoveries expansion. Also comes with a rulebook like so, and it adds a few things to the game. The first thing it adds is it gives you a bag of these plastic minerals, and they look like this. They come in 3 different colors: red, green, and white. And at the beginning of the game, you're going to place 1 on each system that only has a single planet. And so then from then on, whenever you colonize one of those planets with any city, station, whatever, you're going to collect the mineral there. So for example, if the red player moves here and builds a city on that system, he's going to collect this white mineral and keep that in his supply. Another way you can get minerals is by building the research stations that are added to the game. So each player gets 3 of these. When you build a research station on any spot, let's say right here, for example, if the red player could get there and build a research station, you're going to take a random mineral from the bag, you're going to place it inside the research station. And now the next player, it could be the red player or it could be another player, who builds anything adjacent to that research station, they are going to collect the mineral from that research station, and it's going to go to their supply. However, the player who owns the research station is also going to get a random mineral from the bag and add it to their supply. And now going forward, whenever someone builds adjacent to that research station, whether it is the player who owns the research station or another player, the player who owns the research station is going to get another mineral from the bag. So you're going to be collecting these minerals in this way, and the purpose of these minerals is to buy technology cards. So off to the side, you're going to have a deck of technology cards. You're going to have 5 cards laid out face up. Before or after your movement on your turn, you can purchase one of these technology cards. And so the cost to purchase it is on the side here. You can see this one costs 1 white mineral and 1 green mineral. So we could pay those to the bank, essentially, putting them back in the bag, and we could go ahead and buy this card. As soon as you buy this card, you're going to get points equal to this value here. So this would get the player 2 points, but then you're also going to hang on to this card and play it at any time you like, and it has a special ability. For example, this one lets you move one of your cities to an uncolonized planetary system adjacent to that city. Score 1 point for each planet on that system. So these can bend or modify the rules in a lot of different ways. You have abilities like, instead of moving a ship, spend 2 minerals to move one of your ships to an uncolonized system and colonize it with a city. Damage that ship. So that could be a system anywhere on the board. You have subspace shields, which until your next turn, your ships cannot be affected by opponent abilities and effects. And you'll see this one requires a black mineral, that actually is just a wild. So it's going to cost a red mineral, and then any other one mineral, could be red, white, or green. And then you have one like this, which says repair all your damaged ships. And you have one like this, which says refresh one of your technology cards. Basically allows you to reuse one of your other technology cards that's already been used. So you can see there's a wide variety of effects for those cards. And when you buy one, it will come out of the row here and immediately be replaced by one from the top of the deck. Now I'll also mention that both of the two expansions I've just talked about, both the Galactic Divide and Dawn of Discoveries, each come with 4 more of these unexplored system tiles that are different from the ones in the base game, and they have different abilities, some of them good, some of them bad. And they also each come with some of these smaller board tiles that you can use to build out the board and make it larger, thus making the game go longer and take more advantage of the other things that the expansions are adding to the game. And I failed to mention it earlier, but in the last expansion I talked about, not Dawn of Discoveries, but the Galactic Divide, you also score points based on how far along these tracks you have moved your markers. So the more you use your abilities, the more points you score, in addition to the fact that the abilities themselves usually give you points. So both of these expansions, both the Galactic Divide and the Dawn of Discoveries, give you increased ways to score points in different ways. All right, and the final expansion I'm going to share with you is called Fate of the Galaxy. It comes with a very small rulebook like this, and it's a nice complement to the other 2 expansions I've shown you. That is the Galactic Divide and Dawn of Discoveries. And Fate of the Galaxy really adds a few things. One is it adds these 2 cards, which just are laid out on the table. And basically what these do is you have the Galactic Citadel Council, and it's showing you that you can trade any 2 minerals for 2 power, or any 3 minerals for 3 power, or any 5 minerals for 4 power. So any player can use those effects. This card is basically just a reminder of that added rule. And then you have the Galactic Trade Station, which basically does the opposite. You can exchange 2 power for any 2 minerals. You're just drawing random minerals out of the bag. And then you can do the same with 3 power for 3 minerals or 5 power for 4 minerals. So these just let you exchange minerals for power depending on what you're aiming to accomplish on any given turn. The other things that it adds is each player gets one of these. This is called a Covert battle station, and then this is called a Covert trade station. So you can see there's a handful of each type of card. Each player is going to get one of each, and what they do is you have this, for example, an example of a Covert battle station. So this starts out in play next to your player board, and basically what it is you have 3 different effects that you can unlock, and in order to unlock these effects you have to pay the cost up here. So you can pay 3 minerals of any color to put a marker on this and unlock this ability, and that ability says this turn, after you move and colonize with your ship, you may move and colonize again with that ship. So it basically allows you to move your ship twice and colonize twice each turn. So once you've paid those 3 minerals to unlock this, you will always have that ability on your turn. And then over here you can see if you have a green and a red mineral specifically. Oh, I'm sorry, this is immediate, so it only happens once. This, on the other hand, is replayable, which means once you've unlocked it, you can always spend a mineral to choose an opponent's ship if it cannot be moved during that player's next turn. So that's like a new ability you can use every turn. And then finally you have an ongoing ability. So this one costs 2 power and a mineral of any color to unlock, and once you've unlocked it, whenever you colonize a system adjacent to at least 2 of your planetary systems, you gain 1 power. And as soon as you have unlocked 2 abilities that are adjacent to each other, you get the reward in between. So you get either 1 power or 1 mineral for unlocking both of these. So that's what this is all about. The Covert research stations work similarly. They just have slightly different types of abilities. But they're essentially just another variation. So each player gets 1 of each of these, and that gives them some additional abilities that they can unlock over the course of the game. And then finally, each player gets a super weapon and a Galactic Wonder. And the way these work is, in order to use a Galactic Wonder or a super weapon, in order to use the super weapon, you will have had to completely upgraded your Covert battle station. So you will have had to unlock all 3 of these abilities. And then you will have to own technologies that match these technology types. So earlier when I was showing you the technologies, in the top left corner of each technology card is a little symbol. Don't know how well you can see that there. But that symbol corresponds to this symbol over here. So in order to use my subspace bomb, I would have to have completely unlocked all the upgrades on this card, and I would have to own 3 different technology cards from this deck that match these 3 symbols. And then I could use my super weapon. The Galactic Wonder works basically the same way. You have to have those 3 technology cards, and you have to have fully unlocked your Covert research station. And then you can use your Galactic Wonder. Your Galactic Wonder and your super weapon can only be used once each. They have really powerful abilities, and you can only use one or the other each game. So you cannot use both, and you can not use one of them more than once. So that might just depend on which one you happen to be able to unlock first, or you could aim to unlock one or the other depending on what abilities they have. And just to give you an example of these 2 abilities, so this Galactic Wonder, which is called the Great Galactic Gate, lets you score 2 points for each system you control in your largest territory. And you gain 3 power. So that's pretty useful. The Subspace Bomb lets you choose a battle station you control on the board and destroy all non-nebula cities adjacent to it. Score 3 points for each opponent's city destroyed this way. So as you can see, the really powerful abilities on the super weapons and Galactic Wonders, and that's basically what Fate of the Galaxy adds to the game. Alright, so hopefully that gave you a good idea of what's in all these expansions, what each of them brings to the game. My thoughts on the expansions are, with the 5 and 6 player expansion, it just adds the ability to play with 5 or 6 players. I think that's fine. The game works fine with lower player counts, like 3 or 4 players. It's plenty fun. I've played it once with 5 players, and that was fine too. I haven't tried it with 6 players, but the game, because the turns are so quick, even with 6 players, I think it would get around to your turn again pretty quickly. So I wouldn't hesitate to play with 6 players, especially if you're not including any of the other expansion content, or maybe just a little bit of the other expansion content. As you add more of the expansion content, your turns become a little bit longer because you have more decisions to make on your turn. And so I think if you're using all of the expansion content and playing with 5 or 6 players, it might get a little bogged down. But still, I don't think it would be bad because, again, turns, even with all that extra content, your turns are still pretty quick. It'll get back around to your turn before you know it. So I think that expansion's fine. Not really much more to say about that. The Galactic Divide adds those player boards that give you a specific faction you're playing as. That faction has a couple of abilities that are unique to them, and it gives you those battle stations that let you get power, which you can then spend to use your special abilities. Now, that I think honestly is probably my favorite of the expansions, and I think I would tend to play with that expansion just about every time, because it gives each player something that makes them unique, makes them stand out from all the other players. It gives you those asymmetric abilities, and to me it adds a lot more theme to the game. Without any of the expansions, this game is very light on theme. It's mostly just an abstract area control game, which is fine. But I like a little more theme in my games, and so adding those factions with their unique abilities makes it feel more thematic to me. I can feel like, okay, I'm the guys who are big on trade, or are big on conflict, or are just good at getting along with everybody, and we can build cities in their systems, and we can travel through their systems, no problem. You know, it just adds that little bit more theme to the game that makes it much more appealing to me. Now then you have the Dawn of Discoveries, which adds those minerals to the board. It adds those research stations that allow you to get more minerals as the game progresses, and it gives you those technology cards that you can spend the minerals on to buy. So I like all of that. I will say that adding the minerals to the game does add a little bit of time to the setup, because now after setting up everything else about the board, you have to go through and put a random mineral onto each system that only has one planet, so that's an extra step. It doesn't add a lot of extra setup time, but one of the things that I really enjoy about Small Start Empires is that the game, you know, is just very quick to set up, very quick to teach. And I feel like of all the expansion material, the Dawn of Discoveries expansion adds the most to the setup time and to the overall explanation, teaching of the game. So I think that's a bit of a drawback to this expansion, but overall I think that drawback is outweighed by the fact that the minerals are an interesting thing. The technology cards have a huge variety of abilities on them, and so going after those different technology cards is not only another way to get points, but it also gives you those abilities that you can use once each from the technology cards. So I don't think I would be inclined to use Dawn of Discoveries instead of the Galactic Divide, because the thing about the Galactic Divide is it gives you those abilities that are yours from the beginning, and they're more thematic, I think, than the abilities you get from the technology cards. But I do like the technology cards, and I would often play with both of these expansions. I would use them both in concert. So I like that. I recommend playing with both. That's kind of my overall recommendation is if you are playing with people who have never played Small Start Empires, play the base game first. Quick 15-20 minute game. We'll teach them the basics of it. And then go ahead and throw in those two expansions. It adds quite a bit of content, but if you're playing with people who are experienced overall with board games, then I don't think it'll be overwhelming. If you feel the need to, you can always implement things incrementally. So in that case, I would add the Galactic Divide with those different faction boards, and then add Dawn of Discoveries after that. Now, Fate of the Galaxy adds some other things to the game. I like that it adds those two cards that one lets you exchange minerals for power, and the other lets you exchange power for minerals. If I'm playing with both of the other two expansions, I'll always use those two cards because it just gives you much more flexibility in sort of adapting your strategy on the fly. You could wind up with power and prefer to have minerals, or the other way around, and you can make that switch. So that's cool. I like those. The other things, the Covert Battle Station and the Covert Research Station, and then of course the Super Weapon and the Galactic Wonder. So those four types of cards and the abilities that come with them, they're pretty interesting. They're kind of exciting, especially if you can build all the way up to using your Super Weapon or your Galactic Wonder. Those are really powerful effects, and that can be pretty cool and exciting to score a whole bunch of points with those all at once. But I feel like what they add to the game is just something that happens occasionally, if that makes sense. Like you're building up to something really cool that's going to happen once, and it's cool when it happens. But I much prefer the other expansions and how, like adding the battle stations, the power, and this faction abilities, or adding the minerals and the technology cards. Like those are things that are going to affect every turn of the game. Every time you take a turn, you're making a decision about, am I just going to place a city here? Am I going to place a trade station? Am I going to place a battle station or a research station? So every turn you have two options that you didn't have without the expansions. And then every turn you're weighing, is now a good time to spend my power to use one of my faction abilities? Is now a good time to cash in these minerals to buy this technology card? Is now a good time to use the technology card I have bought? Should I go settle this system because it'll get me this mineral, which is part of the cost to pay for that technology card, or should I go somewhere else because maybe I'll get more points there? So all those different options come into play every turn with those expansions, whereas the stuff in Fate of the Galaxy just doesn't have that same overall feeling to it. So I feel like Fate of the Galaxy overall, it's interesting, but it's kind of adding another layer of stuff that doesn't have as much of an impact on my overall enjoyment of the game. So anyway, those are kind of my impressions of the expansions. 5 to 6 player, if use them, don't use them. There's no reason not to play with 5 or 6 players, but it's just kind of, it is what it is. The Galactic Divide, definitely my favorite because it adds those factions with their unique abilities. Dawn of Discoveries, the technology cards are cool. There's a little bit, takes away a little bit, I think, from adding that extra setup and extra teaching time to the game. But overall, it's not bad. Putting the two together and using those 2 cards from Fate of the Galaxy that lets you swap power and minerals, that's kind of the sweet spot for me. Those elements taken together really elevate this game from an abstract area control game to a much more thematic game about developing your space empire, spreading out across the galaxy, settling different sectors, having some occasional conflict with other players, developing new technologies, looking for opportunities to gain power and use your special faction abilities. All of that makes the game so much more interesting, so much more exciting, more thematic. And all of those expansions that I have still fit in the base box. So I like that. It's a tight fit, but you can get it all in there. And so all of that still is in a small package, still pretty quick to set up, still pretty quick to teach. It does make the game go a little bit longer, but I think the added strategy and theme is worth the cost. It's still not like a 2 or 3 hour long game. It's still a relatively short game, like maybe an hour to play. So all that taken together, yeah, definitely good. The expansions take what is a fine game and make it a pretty great game. So definitely recommend Small Star Empires. Definitely recommend the expansions, especially the Galactic Divide and Dawn of Discoveries. Those are the 2 main expansions for the game as well. If you want to tack on Fate of the Galaxy, it's cool for those 2 cards that let you swap the minerals and power, but otherwise it's more or less passable. And if you know about those 2 cards and how they work, you can just kind of explain to everyone at the table that this is a rule, we can do this, we can swap these 2 things. So those are my thoughts on Small Star Empires and its expansions. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Nathan, this is Nice at Dice, and you enjoy the rest of your day.